TV recap, and this time we've got the sequel series to the cult phenomenon that took the world by storm last summer, and that would be Stranger Things, the 80s nostalgia porn that Netflix had no idea would soon become more famous than House of Cards and all their Marvel shows combined. The first season was a great homage to 80s pop culture that has now inspired a million different ripoffs in both film and TV, introduced the world to 4 of the best new kid actors, as well as shining a light on some very talented actors who may not have gotten the spotlight that they deserved in the past. It also introduced the world to the creative talent of the Duffer Brothers and what they're capable of directing-wise. The question is, though, was this season destined for greatness, or was the first season a one-hit wonder, making this yet another in a long series of sophomore slumps? Let's find out. This is Stranger Things Season 2. So just a quick plot summary. The series picks up a year later in 1984, and things have seemingly gone back to normal, but not really. Despite having been successfully removed from the Upside Down, poor Will is still having visions of other dimensions, and now has to go to daily checkup at the Hawkins laboratory, which is now run by Dr. Owens, played by Paul Reiser. You also get a quick check-in with the other major characters from last season, that being Will's 3 best friends, Mike, played by Finn Wolfhard, Dustin, played by Gaten Matarazzo, and Lucas, played by Caleb McLaughlin. Will's mom, Joyce, played by Winona Ryder, and brother Jonathan, played by Charlie Heaton, Mike's sister Nancy, played by Natalia Dyer, and boyfriend Steve Harrington, played by Joe Keery, and Hawkins police chief Jim Hopper, played by Dave Harbour, who's been working with the Hawkins lab and the government to keep the events of the previous year a secret. You've also got a couple of new characters introduced. Besides Dr. Owens, you've got Joyce's new boyfriend Bob, played by Sean Astin, a Radio Shack employee who went to high school with Joyce and Hopper, as well as 2 new kids who've moved to town. Lone skateboarder Maxine, played by Sadie Sink, or Max for short, and her delinquent older brother Billy, played by Dacre Montgomery. Missing from the whole equation, however, is Eleven, who, as you all know, disappeared after vaporizing the monster at the end of last season. Well, as it turns out, her coming back was never supposed to be a major point of the series, because at the end of the first episode, it's revealed that she's been living with Hopper for the past year. It's also later revealed that almost immediately after she vaporized the Demogorgon, she managed to make an exit for herself back into our world and was living in the woods for a couple weeks before Hopper found her, and has been keeping her a secret from her friends because she doesn't want the government to know that she's still alive. Unfortunately, as much as they want Hawkins to go back to normal, it just won't, as Will's trips to the Upside Down coincide with a series of pumpkin patches seemingly all rotting simultaneously, signifying that whatever the Upside Down may have in store for Hawkins, Indiana, it is just the beginning. So now that the recap part of the recap is done, for this one I'm going to do something a little bit different, because rather than breaking down every facet of the show, I am going to do a more simple version this time, because what I'm going to do is I made a pros and cons list on my phone, so I'm going to read off my pros and my cons, and I'm going to break down what I really liked and what I really didn't like about each part of this season of Stranger Things, because I feel like this is a good way to get my points across, and at the same time be spoilerific and not spoilerific, if that makes any sense at all, because I may be keeping some major plot details a secret, although some major plot details will still be spoiler-filled. So if you have not seen Stranger Things Season 2 and plan on watching it in the near future, this is the segment where you turn away. You have been warned. So for the pros, number 1, the acting all around the board is stepped up. Oh my god. So I've already said that one of my favorite parts about Stranger Things Season 1 is the great cast of kids that they got. And for Season 2, Round 2, all around the board, they all step it up. Finn Wolfhard, Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, Millie Bobby Brown, and even Noah Schnapp and new addition Sadie Sink. These kids are all beyond so good, but it's not just the kids, it's also the adults and the older figures. For 2 of the standouts for me, once again, Chief Jim Hopper, Dave Harbour, 100% deserved the Emmy nomination from last year, and I believe that he will definitely get another one this year. I really particularly enjoyed the moments between him and Eleven. Those gave me some really heartfelt, genuine moments that kind of flashed back to his connection with his daughter at the end of Season 1. I really loved that. Mike, Finn Wolfhard, holy shit. Every single moment that this kid was on screen, he was acting his ass off, and it was just so perfect and beautiful to watch. Just him missing Eleven so much, and their final reunification. It was just, I would say he should get an Emmy nomination over Dave Harbour this year. The problem is that just overall, because there are more characters and because you have to, give screen time to certain characters in order to develop them well, I will say that Finn kind of got the short end of the stick in terms of screen time, because I definitely feel like I wanted just a tad bit more from him. Dustin, on the other hand, oh man, I friggin' loved this kid because of how relatable and just how great of an arc he had in the first season. But in this season, they kind of sent him off on a little bit of his own, and they even team him up with Steve for a little bit. And this kid is just, he is so likable, he is so genuine, and at times he even seems to be the most mature and level-headed one, not just among the kids themselves, but amongst the adults too. And he is just such a joy to watch. His two front teeth coming in, that was a little bit of subtle comedy, but it was just really, really great. And I love Dustin. Dustin is great. Also Lucas too. Lucas stepped it up too. Just all around, everybody stepped it up. I would say there was not a single performance here that disappointed me. Except for one, but I'll get to that later. Steve Harrington. So this was a guy who at the beginning of last season was kind of being set up to play that, you know, stereotypical douchebag boyfriend. And they ended up kind of pulling a 180 with him, not only by having him, you know, actually feel bad for some of the actions that he took, but also turning into kind of a badass by pulling out that bat and taking on that Demogorgon like that. He starts off this season and he is great, and his arc that he goes through in this season is arguably like one of the best arcs in the entire season, because he just proves to be such a great character, such a great friend, such a genuinely good human being, and also kind of seeing him in this position of not really being the king of the school anymore, that's really, really good. It offers a lot of dynamic growth on his part. Also, just seeing his interaction with Dustin and the rest of the kids is so pitch perfect and gives us some of the most laughs that we get from the season. The other addition, a quintessential member of the 80s, is now in a show about the 80s. Sean Astin, Mikey himself from the Goonies, and I am happy to say that he is friggin' fantastic. I haven't really seen Sean Astin do anything major since Lord of the Rings, which sucks because he is really a really good actor, and he is so lovable, he is so genuine, and they kind of pull a 180 around his character, which I'll get to in my cons, in terms of the ending, where because of the way that the direction that this first season set up, where they kind of take the character that you kind of trust the most and then flip it on its head, just like, oh, he's the bad guy. So I was kind of expecting that with him, but then they didn't go that route, and I really, really appreciated that. Just so sweet, so lovable, so genuine, and just overall just a great performance from Sean Astin. I'm really, really glad to see him back doing something major, and I want to see him do more things after this, because Sean Astin, we miss you. Come, do more stuff. Be more mainstream. Stepped up production and effects. So Stranger Things Season 1 kind of set the stage for this really, really cool, sleek version in terms of kind of doing a throwback to the 80s, but at the same time for the 21st century, and they really stepped it up here because the budget and the effects for the Demogorgons, for the giant smoke monster, for the Upside Down, it all looks much better, much more stepped up, much more beautiful too, a lot less fake. Like, the Demodogs in Light still look fake. I've already kind of gone into in the past about like what is the best to do for CG, and the reason why we get so much terrible looking CG now is because it is so overused and they do all the wrong things in terms of CGI. In terms of when you want good CG in something, you want to do as many wide shots, and you also want to do it in the dark as possible, because that's how you get around it, because a lot of close-ups and also CG in the daytime, that's what ends up causing it to look fake, because then you have to render it more in order to make it look realistic, and that's what causes time, and that's what causes us to get so many shitty CG effects in movies now. But the CG and the action and the production all around the board is stepped up. Mwah. Major props to the Duffer Brothers for doing that. Another thing that's really stepped up all around the board, the action. Because the thing with the first season is that it was more of a mystery in terms of setting up to finding Will and kind of the exploration of what exactly the Upside Down is. But in this season, we already know what the Upside Down is, so you don't really have to tackle that. So what you do instead is you can double up on the action, and man, do they deliver, because there are so many fun action sequences in this series. Not enough that it like kind of changes the tone overall, but it does a really good job when it needs to lay down, because whenever Hopper doesn't punch as many people in this season as he does in the last season, but whenever he is shooting at demo dogs, it is awesome. Whenever there's a really cool scene where Steve, Lucas, Max, and Dustin are all kind of like gearing down to like face off against Demodog, and Steve has to roll over. Steve goes outside with his baseball bat, and he faces off against the two dogs, and there's one sneaking up from behind him, and it leaps at him, and he like leaps over, and he like rolls over a car to avoid it. It's awesome. Paul Reiser is not a shifty asshole. That's a great thing, because Paul Reiser, while being a great actor, has kind of gotten into that stigma of, especially because he's another big 80s actor, of playing shifty assholes that usually completely betray you. And I was really glad to see him not play that, especially because he was stepping into the shoes of playing the role that Matthew Modine played last season. And I've already gone on record that despite Matthew Modine's character portrayal, he was one of my least favorite parts of last season, not just for the character that he played being, you know, obviously the bad guy of the season, but also he didn't really have that much to do. But Paul Reiser, seeing him come in, not only be kind and affectionate to Will, but also just overall be an all-around good guy, like when the other scientists in the lab are kind of bringing up just like, hey, we should let the kid die in order to kill off the disease. And he's like, no, don't do that, he's a freaking kid. So I really appreciated Paul Reiser. He gave a great performance, another stigma from the 80s that was kind of thrown in there. The emotion, because overall, the obviously just the thing of seeing these characters brought back yet again, because like I said, the stigma, the captivating part of this show is how great these characters are, but there are a ton of emotional moments that just really sell the season and make it great. Like, obviously Mike and Eleven's reunification at the end when they see each other for the first time in a year is beautiful. Whenever you see Hopper and Eleven kind of bonding, you know, when they're setting up that cabin that they live in, he's dancing to the music, that's great. When they have their argument and Eleven's kind of, you know, busting out all over the place, that's great. Just, there are a lot of great moments in this season that really hit you in the feels, and I feel like this is one of the parts that this season does better than last season, where it just, oh man, there are some definite gut punches, some more of which that I'll get into in a little bit. And now we're getting into the cons part of it, because I feel like I've talked a lot about all the good things that I have to say about it. Now granted, I did like this season of Stranger Things season 2, but as I do, as most critics do, and when we talk about something that we like, we also have to talk about the things that we don't like. And there was a fair, decent amount about this season that I did not like, unfortunately. Structurally, this season, I would say, story-wise, is very similar to the first season. Now that's kind of more of a personal nitpick than it is an actual criticism, but just in terms of, okay, something happens, inciting incident, now that everybody's got to kind of figure out what it is, they all go on their separate paths in order to try and figure it out, and then they all come together at the end in order to face the inclement evil. Again, a lot more of a personal nitpick than it is an overall gripe, but it's just, for a series that feels so seamlessly cinematic, I would have thought the Duffer Brothers would have done something a little bit different with this season story-wise, so that's just something that really stood out to me. Again, not a problem that I have, just more of a personal little nitpick. Dacre fucking Montgomery. Now look, I don't have a problem with this guy acting-wise. I actually thought he was one of the better parts about Power Rangers, a movie that for the most part I did not like that much. In this season, however, this dude is literally reduced to playing not just a bully, but one of the most one-dimensional, one-note, just asshole characters that is just so unlikable to the point where it just becomes annoying to watch him. Like, obviously when he first pulls up on the screen, he is just a clear douchebag, but it's just a matter of, I feel like the writers either A, didn't really know what to do with him, or B, kind of just had him there as set up for like future storylines, which is okay. The only problem is that when he first pulls up, there is a lot of like deep shit that he kind of alludes to, and then their solution to it at the end of the season is, oh, his dad is an asshole, and that's it. And he's also got one of the most one-dimensional father figures of all time, so that's one of the reasons. Again, my problem was more so with the writing of his character than the actual performance, but still, didn't like his character even a little bit. He was very one-dimensional, I found, and also there's one scene at the end in the last episode where he's hitting on Mike and Nancy's mom, who once again is played by Cara Buono, who, again, through no fault of her own, is the most wasted part of the show, and it's really gross and uncomfortable, and I'm not sure what the intention here is, but it's just really weird and feels really out of place. Will Byers. Poor Will Byers, who for the first season was absent for most of it because again, he was the subject of the manhunt. They were trying to look for him, they were trying to find him, and he ended up being, turned out he was trapped in the Upside Down for most of it. This season, however, he is now a main member of the cast. He is now back in the fold of Hawkins' laboratory. The problem is that Will is used kind of more of a plot device this season than he is a character. Now, this may just be something of a criticism that I have, but the problem is that so throughout the season, Will is constantly flashing to the Upside Down, and he ends up seeing this giant smoke monster thing that ends up possessing him, and it causes him to end up, you know, being like the smoke monster's viewpoint into the normal world, because the smoke monster is kind of like the embodiment of the Upside Down and wants to like take over the world and everything, so they basically explain it as like a virus. The problem is that this kind of forces Will to just end up being strapped to a lab table for the most of second season and kind of just screaming and not really serving a purpose other than to serve the plot, which is fine, but again, it's like in terms of exploring the character of Will, I kind of wanted to see a little bit more from a character that was, again, absent for most of the first season. No fault to Noah Schnapp, the kid does a really good job acting-wise, but again, just again, this comes off probably more as a little bit of a nitpick that I have rather than an actual criticism, but just one thing that kind of stood out to me that I didn't really like that much. Dustin's little pet turning out to be a Demogorgon. Now, I knew that there was going to be an E.T. reference thrown in somewhere, no, not an E.T. reference, because that was kind of the whole thing with 11 in the first season. What I mean is a Gremlins reference, because in the third episode, Dustin finds a little polywog thing in his trash can, and as the series goes on, and he takes it in and it grows, it turns out to be another mini version of the Demogorgon. For me, that was I understand what they were trying to go for in terms of the whole Gremlins connection and giving him a connection, this scary thing that could potentially kill him. But for me, that was kind of a no-doy moment, and that felt a little bit more like a forced reference than an actual good story plug, because despite the fact that Dustin is a great character, I feel like it wouldn't be in his character to make a decision that dumb of just like, okay, this is only a year after the whole Upside Down thing, and you're gonna just take this alien-looking thing like without any recollection, like without even possibly considering the fact that it might be another remnant of the Upside Down, and he just goes and blatantly adopts it, and then has a personal connection to it when it does turn out to be a Demogorgon. He calls it a Demodog because they're on all four legs now. That was just a kind of a dumb moment that stood out to me that really didn't make any sense overall in the plug, especially because it ended up being one of the things that ended up contributing to the final fight where they ended up having to fight it. So yeah, dumb decision that didn't really make sense from a writing standpoint and from the story standpoint. Nancy and Jonathan get the shaft this season. Now, Nancy was another character, Steve's sister, played by Natalia Dyer, was another character from the first season that I really enjoyed in terms of she started off as like kind of a stereotype and a cliche, and then she ended up turning into this, kind of fully fleshed out character. And then Jonathan, who was, again, another part of one of my favorite parts of the first season. I thought Charlie Heaton did a great job. The problem is that story-wise this season, I feel like they aren't really given that much to do because, again, I feel like this is the Duffers really responding to the social media outrage that was sparked last year because of a certain character named Barb, who I want to find the person that started that on Twitter and strangle them, because the whole thing of making a big deal over Barb is total bullshit. She was a stock character. She was nothing but a plot device. She served a purpose. She got killed off, and then everybody kept dragging it out and just saying, oh, justice for Barb, justice for Barb, justice for Barb. And I feel like the whole Nancy Jonathan story arc this time reflected that, because their whole story arc resulted in Nancy breaking up with Steve because she blamed herself and Steve while getting drunk over letting Barb die, and this resulted in Steve, through no fault of his own, getting dumped, simply as a precursor for her sleeping with Jonathan, which, again, feels really forced because it feels like something that kind of should have already happened. And also, so Brett Gelman has a cameo in this season as a conspiracy theorist who's trying to expose the things that are going on in the Hawkins laboratory. And Nancy and Jonathan end up finding him and helping him and giving him information in order to try and, expose the Hawkins laboratory and get justice for Barb. And then he ends up saying just like, oh yeah, you guys should totally sleep together. And then they sleep together. And then they go and they end up reuniting with everybody, and then they have the kind of whole hoorah showdown. But it feels like a giant waste of two characters that for the most part were really set up. And I feel like it's a combination of, again, a lot of characters and them kind of getting the shorter end of the stick when it comes to screen time, and also responding to the fans' backlash on Twitter and just didn't like it. Didn't like what they did with Nancy and Jonathan this season. I definitely feel like they could have been better utilized. Killing off Sean Astin. Now, I know that this is Stranger Things, which means that throughout the season, at least one character is not going to make it out. And that's fine, but so going back to Sean Astin is one of my favorite parts of this season. I thought he did a beautiful job acting-wise. And my problem with them killing off his character is not the decision to kill off the character, and because, again, I know the Duffer Brothers' whole argument of, again, this is not necessarily a kid show, this is going to have some dark moments, characters are going to die, and I know that, and I'm fine with that. My problem is that overall for the story, it kind of feels like a waste of a character and an actor, because there are little hints throughout the season that kind of signify, oh, Joy and Hopper also went to high school together. And, they have these little kind of personal moments that kind of signify that they're going to get together at some point. The only thing is, the first season already did a pretty good job of setting that up in the first place. So, by having Bob now in there as this figure in Joy's life, which kind of should have been in Hopper in the first place, it kind of just makes him feel overall like a waste. And so killing him off feels like more of an excuse to get rid of him, to get Joy and Hopper together, rather than seeing an ending and a tragic killing of a character that everybody loved. It is still that, but at the same time, you also have that other thing in there, and it kind of drives me nuts, and it makes me really mad. Also, just the overall execution of the death, I also feel like that could have been handled better, but then again, when it comes to, like, killing off people in, like, a horror sense, it's already so hard to do that because there's so many cliches surrounding that. 11 solo episodes. So, the first opening scene of this series is a couple kids, well not kids, teenagers, young adults, I think, in Chicago, Illinois, and they're running from the police, and this one girl causes rubble from the bridge to collapse, and then you see a number on her wrist and it's 008, and you're like, oh shit, is this going to set up like potentially more test subjects other than 11? So what happens is, at the end of, so 11 ends up leaving Hopper's, and she ends up going to search for her mom, and she actually finds her mom, and you find out what happened, what Dr. Brenner and the other scientists at the lab did to her mom, which caused her to start acting crazy, which is a very tearful, tragic episode. But then she goes to Chicago because she remembers that there was another test subject in there, a black girl. So she goes and she finds the black girl in Chicago, and she turns out is the one with the number 8 on her wrist. And the entire episode ends up kind of being like a solo journey for 11, you know, kind of her, you know, expanding, running with these kids, how growing and developing her powers, and it's a great character moment, and it's some of Millie Bobby Brown's best acting. The problem is that it's kind of a shitty payoff to a really great setup, because rather than having, you know, setting up future storylines for later on and showing that, like, okay, they're gonna now search for other test subjects and we're gonna kind of see what other powers erupted as a result from the experiment, now, instead, it turns out that, okay, it was just nothing but an explanation dump to try and, give more of a character piece to 11. And I don't have a problem with that. It's just that, again, it's a situation of, it feels like a shitty payoff to a really, really great setup, and especially because a lot of those characters in that episode I just didn't care about, and especially because I already knew where it was going, because I knew that 11 was going to go back to Hawkins and help a friend, so it just felt like a kind of a derailment and quite possibly a filler episode in a series that has traditionally been known for not having filler episodes. So now, the last thing that I'm going to talk about, and this really isn't anything that I really liked or disliked about the series, but that would be one of the new characters, and that would be Max, Billy's younger brother, who ends up forming kind of this love triangle between Lucas and Dustin before she ends up pretty much talking to Lucas. Now, I didn't like Max when she was first introduced. I thought she was going to be another kind of a cliched character, but she ends up kind of growing on me throughout the series by this, and, when she kind of ingratiates herself into the group. I didn't really have a problem with her overall for the series, but that's probably going to be a character that I'm going to need to see a little bit more from before I can be like, yes, I like you. So, again, not really a problem that I have with it, but at the same time, not really something I liked about it was the inclusion of Max, played by Sadie Sink. Overall, this season, I really, really enjoyed it. It was definitely by no means a sophomore slump, which I am really glad, because, again, there have been a lot of situations with TV shows that have had that sophomore slump. Friday Night Lights, I feel like, was the biggest victim. Another massive victim of that was Walking Dead. But I do have to say that overall, as a season, I did not like it more than the first season, but I definitely didn't like it any less. Like I said, we got some great character moments, we got some cool new visuals, we definitely got a little bit of world expansion, although not that much, which is probably another one of the reasons why I feel like this season didn't succeed as much as I would have wanted to. That said, this is by no means a bad season of television. Stranger Things Season 2 still delivered. You still had all those great character moments, you still had a lot of really emotional oomph, and I definitely foresee a lot more Emmy nominations coming for this cast in the future, and overall I would say that this season is definitely deserving of another SAG award for Best Casting Ensemble like it did last year. So, Stranger Things Season 2, I am definitely giving a thumbs up. Go watch it. It is great. So that's it. That is my recap review for Stranger Things Season 2. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Also, be sure to click that like button and that subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter at Movie Nerd Review. Also, head on over to my website, movienerdreviews.com. That is it. I will see you guys next time. Go!